right. Really excited to be up here and to see so many familiar faces in the crowd. I'm excited to get a chance to talk to all of you today. For those of you who I haven't had a chance to meet yet, my name is Suzanne Dergacheva. I'm one of the co-founders of Evolving Web. And usually I'm the one at the conference walking around with my little Drupaler, Sophia, who's with our babysitter at the back of the room right now. So that's sometimes how you can recognize me. If you have any questions about what I chat about today, you can always feel free to come up and ask me questions, or I've got my email address right there for you. And today I'm going to be talking a little bit about what innovation means to us right now, and in this moment at this Drupal event. How should we be thinking about innovation? And how should we be letting it drive us? So I don't know about you, but it feels to me like we are on the cusp of some kind of paradigm shift. We're on the cusp of some innovative future that we don't really know what it's going to look like yet. And we're hearing the word innovation in the air a lot. We're hearing a lot about AI and things like this. And it also came up at DrupalCon. So if you were at DrupalCon or if you listened to the Dries note afterwards, you would have heard Dries talk about innovation S-curves and the fact that because Drupal has this really supportive environment for innovation, we're able in the Drupal community to get beyond an innovation S-curve. So an innovation S-curve is when you have a lot of rapid innovation at the beginning when a product is released, and then there's kind of a stagnation as the product gets adopted. But open source allows us to create this supportive environment, and we can jump from one S-curve to the next and continue innovating. And this is a really interesting idea to me. And at the same time, in general, outside of Drupal, it feels like we're in a bit of a bubble. It feels like our relationship to technology is about to change, and we have maybe multiple bubbles going on because we have these huge investments happening in different parts of the economy. So we have a lot of investments happening in AI. If you've been staying up to date, you know that AI startups are getting these huge sums of money to invest, and largely they're investing in computing power, GPUs, to generate all these images or text that we love to play with. Like the images in this presentation, generated with DALL-E. At the same time, there's been a big investment bubble, a lot of, I shouldn't use the word bubble so much, but a lot of venture capitalists investing in software as a service. So startups that are saying, you're going to scale up in the cloud, and banks are eager to lend money to those types of projects. And all of this with the really goal of growth. So we see like a lot of investment in innovation so that things can grow, and that's kind of the goal. Maybe innovation a bit for innovation's sake. And in the open source community, I think we can stand back and say, well, why are we innovating? What is the purpose of all of this? There's this general idea that innovation is good, because it sounds good, it sounds great. But maybe not all innovation is made equal, right? So in the past 10 years, I don't know about you, but I work at Evolving Web, this agency, so we get a lot of RFPs from clients, some of whom are in the room today, and a lot of these new projects, we see things like, oh, I want to see AI technology somehow integrated into the project. Let us know how we can integrate AI. And maybe we're talking here about a library website. So we can think about ways we can introduce AI, but it seems a little bit like people just don't want to get left behind, and that maybe we're not, we don't know yet what the technology is good for, but we want to integrate it into our projects because we don't want to be that person who was late to the party. And it reminds me of a story that my dad told me. He used to work at Canada Life, which is this large financial institution, this large insurance company. And back in the 90s, he was the tech guy, and he said, oh, I think we need a website, right? So they got together and they made the website, and what did the website have on it? It had, a picture of the people on the board of directors. So it was great they had a website, but what was the website actually for, and what were websites actually for? It wasn't clear yet what the purpose of websites should be. And so it kind of feels like we're at that phase right now where there's these technologies that exist, but sometimes we don't know yet exactly what they should be used for. So we have these drives to innovation to grow, but I think open source is kind of in this unique position to outlast any kind of innovation bubble. And that's because open source is not just all about growth, because there's not just one force behind it. There's not just this bank saying, oh, you have to grow. Instead, open source is all about looking at things from a million different angles. It's all about you using a technology, but somebody else using the technology in a really different way, and having a different perspective on what it should be and what's important. And all these different people poking holes in it. And so it's not about growth for growth's sake. It's more driven by people than driven by an investor. And so just as an example, who here has tried out the Layout Builder? The Layout Builder module? My colleague Teresa has a great tutorial. If you Google Layout Builder tutorial, I bet you'll find it. It might be the first video you see. I recommend trying it out. So it's a module. When it was first introduced into Drupal, a lot of extra effort was made into making not just the output of Layout Builder accessible, but also the interface for creating layouts, the interface for creating landing pages or designing what your content's going to look like. That is also accessible. So some people don't know this, but you can use it, for example, without drag and drop. We always hear about drag and drop tools, but what about people who can't drag and drop? So Layout Builder was built with this in mind. And it was not because some investor said, oh, accessibility is the most important feature here. It's because it was created by a group of people that prioritize accessibility and believe that that's how digital tools should be built. And so I'm really proud of that, that Drupal has that ethos where that is what happens. And I fully believe that now, as we have the opportunity to integrate AI into Drupal, that this community that we're in is going to challenge any technology that takes our data and sends it off somewhere for the sake of having AI. And so I believe that people are going to question how AI technology is introduced into Drupal, and that this technology is going to be held up to a higher standard. So there's this tension between this desire not to get left behind. We want to innovate. We don't want to be that company that didn't have a website for years and years. But at the same time, we want to hold our technology to a higher standard and to expect more from it all the time. And so Drupal actually fits really well here because it gives us the ability to standardize and to do things the right way, to adopt technology in a way where we are looking at other perspectives and not just the perspective of an investor or a client. And then it's also benefiting us because it's constantly changing. So sometimes we get new innovations introduced into our version of Drupal, and people say, oh, you should upgrade to Drupal 10. Well, why? Oh, because it's the latest version. And we don't know why yet, but it's going to be so innovative because there's things coming down the line. We don't even know yet necessarily why, but we know that it's going to be changing, and we want to keep up. And so with that being said, what's the practical takeaway from this little intro that I'm giving? I think we can think about innovation in Drupal in 3 ways. So all of you here use Drupal in some capacity, And I bet that you can do innovation with Drupal, and you can do it in all these ways or one of the ways. So first of all, we can innovate with Drupal by using its functionality to build something new. Drupal has this great architecture that's always been its real strength. People say Drupal's flexible. Drupal also has a great content structure that allows us to do really interesting projects. And that's in itself is a tool for innovation. And it's a tool for innovation done right, because alongside that architecture comes Drupal's built-in accessibility and security. We can also innovate next to Drupal. We can innovate alongside Drupal. So we can say, oh, I want to build this really cool React interface. I want to build something new, this dynamic tool in my website. But I'm going to do that alongside the Drupal stack. So that's another way to innovate. And then the third way is actually innovate in Drupal itself, to innovate on Drupal as a product. So 3 examples from projects. So this is a project that some of my team members have been working on with the McGill School of Architecture. And it's actually a product to expose data about housing that helps us make smarter environmental decisions. So if you're going to build like a 49-story building at Cape and Danforth, which is a project being planned in the city of Toronto, how do we make sure that that project is done in a sustainable way? And is a 49-floor building really the right choice, or is there better housing materials, better number of stories that would be more efficient for the environment? And so when they came to us, it's a project Evolving Web's been working on. They came to us and they had all this data, and they said, we want to basically make this information accessible. And because we're using Drupal's architecture to model that data, we have a lot of flexibility with how we can make it available. We can use it to drive search. We can use it to drive really interesting summaries of content. Drupal's really so great at pulling out information and displaying it in new ways. And then we can also display it as individual projects, actual housing projects that people can dig into. And so we're able to innovate really with Drupal using its core tool set. At the same time, sometimes this isn't enough. Rather than just building something with Drupal's core tool set, we want to create something more dynamic. And maybe that's because we want users to be able to interact with the content a bit more and have a more flexible way of playing around with the data. So another project, I worked on this project a little bit. It's for Princeton University, and it's kind of an itinerary builder. It's like, oh, we're going to take all these programs, these study abroad programs, and we're going to let students mix and match. We're going to let them decide, oh, I'm going to go study abroad in Japan, but I have to learn Japanese first. So let me design the courses that I'm going to take so that they all line up. And so that cool kind of itinerary builder, we said, well, really the best way to build this is using JavaScript. But rather than building the whole website in JavaScript, which would throw away all this Drupal work of creating, accessible landing pages and having great forms that are secure, we built it using a hybrid architecture. So most of the website is using core Drupal, and then we have selected pages that are where we have kind of like a decoupled takeover of part of the page. And then the third way of innovating with Drupal is really like making Drupal itself more dynamic, more useful for more things. So I mentioned the layout builder earlier. I'm not going to steal Delisa's thunder because she has to talk on this whole thing later. The layout builder itself, some people put up their hands, they had used it. If you go and install it today, you might think, this is great, but it's not what I had in mind when I heard drag and drop tools. It's a little bit tricky to use. It's a little bit too much for just building a landing page. There's so many options, like so many things in Drupal. And so why not make it better? We're holding it up to the light. We're saying, how can we improve this for content editors? How can we actually make it into a tool that everybody wants to use? So Layout Builder doesn't look like this now. These are some wireframes for future development, and this project is hopefully going to achieve a lot. This is just a third way we can innovate, is actually making Drupal itself better. And so I challenge you today to think about how your organization's using Drupal, how you're thinking about innovation, and how the two can go hand in hand. And yeah, I hope that thought can lead to maybe more rigor in your work to think about, as we innovate, let's not throw away what we have that's good. Let's not sacrifice our high standards. And let's make sure that when we decide to make technology choices, that we're really making them for all the right reasons.